Hi everyone, Brian Hotzig, CTO with NCSI here to talk about Meltdown and Spectre. You've probably heard about this in the news. What are Meltdown and Spectre? Well, in the first week of January 2018, some researchers found some hardware flaws in Intel processors. Now, what's unique about them is this is not a software problem. There's a hardware problem that's deep inside the silicon. And so this is going to be a lot more wide-ranging. It affects lots of different operating systems, lots of different kinds of chips, and really affects everyone. And so we need to dig into what we need to do to resolve this particular problem. So what is Meltdown? What is Spectre? What do they mean? Well, Meltdown, they named it that because it actually melts the security boundaries between applications so that one application can potentially steal memory from another. And there's normally a hardware component to that to keep that protected. Spectre is based on something called Speculative Execution. And it's going to be a little bit harder to fix over the long term, but it's also more difficult to exploit. So the Meltdown is a good example of that. Could be a JavaScript application could steal password information from your web browser. That's how sensitive this particular vulnerability is and how critical it is to find a fix for it. The speculative execution, like I described, is going to be a lot harder to exploit than the Meltdown. There are no known exploits out today that are actually in the wild, people using this to break into systems. There are some sample code of people demonstrating how to use it, but there's no known wide-ranging exploits. These can be complex to fix over time, and so we need to apply lots of different patches, some to the kernel, some to web browsers, etc. So as with everything, security in layers when it comes to correcting these particular problems. Web browsers are kind of the first avenue of things that we can protect. Because of that JavaScript style vulnerability that I described earlier, they should be one of the first things we need to look into fixing. For example, Firefox in their 57.0.4 release has applied a patch to help correct some of the issues. Chrome has a fix coming out in January on the 26th, but you can actually go turn something on called site isolation in the meantime to help give you some levels of protection. Internet Explorer and Edge are patched with some Microsoft patches that are out right now. There's an operating system patch you need to worry about as well, so be it for Mac OS or for Windows or iOS, etc. Let's talk about the Microsoft side first. So Microsoft operating systems, that's Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, all of the major operating systems, servers, 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, etc. They need to have a patch applied to them, and Microsoft released them at the first part of the year. Now, the problem is that they're a kernel-level patch. What Microsoft discovered in testing these patches is certain antivirus manufacturers were making calls against the kernel in an improper way. And so what would happen is it would actually start blue screening the machine. So what Microsoft did was, before this patch gets applied, it actually checks a registry key that the AV manufacturer needs to put in place first to make sure that they understand the changes that need to be made for these kernel calls. What happens if you go to apply that patch and that registry key is missing, it will simply not apply the patch at all. So if you keep applying it and it keeps saying it's vulnerable and you can't seem to get the patch, check that antivirus registry key. For example, with Ivanti products, Ivanti uses the Kaspersky antivirus engine. As long as the database definitions are December 28th, 2017 or later, it actually puts those registry key in place. If you use a third-party antivirus, please go check with that antivirus vendor on if you need to apply a patch or a definition to make sure that that's there first before we can apply this kernel patch. On Macintosh, if you're on Mac OS 10.13.2 or later, you're protected. On mobile devices, iOS 11.2 and is protected, and on Android, the January 2018 security patch applies a patch to resolve this particular vulnerability. So that's kind of the background on it. Let's talk about how Ivanti products can actually help you and protect against this particular vulnerability. Here in my console, I have the Ivanti Endpoint Manager product, and this is the patch management component that I'm going to show you. Here under Vulnerabilities, I've created a custom group here for my Meltdown and Spectre. Just go and make sure your patches are getting downloaded, and they'll show up here in the detected vulnerabilities. And then, like I said, I just did for grouping mechanism, put them in here under Meltdown and Spectre so I can keep track of them. You can see on the publish date over here on the side, most of them came out in the January timeframe. You can see we have ones like for the Firefox up here at the top, Firefox 5704. Here are the various operating system patches. You can see that there's a standalone security-only update in addition to some monthly roll-ups that include this particular patch. Now, for those of you that are familiar with patch management, you know it's going to be pretty easy. You can come in here and you can choose a repair. You can look at the affected computers on who actually needs this particular patch, and then hopefully the end result is you're going to go here to autofix and turn on autofix so this gets patched across your organization. So keep tabs on this. There's going to be more patches that would be added over time as other, for example, Chrome comes out with new patches, or there's any other operating systems or so forth that need to be have patches applied to them. Thanks for watching today. Again, my name is Brian Hotzik with NCSI. I appreciate you watching today. If you have any questions, my contact information is going to be down below. Please reach out. I'll be more than happy to help you out with it. Thanks for coming.